Hey guys, welcome back. And today I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I just read this book called Artemis. It's by Andy Weir. He's the author of The Martian. And Artemis is like The Martian. It's about some sci-fi stuff, and it revolves around a 26, 27-year-old girl living in the lunar city called Artemis. And oops. And her adventures in the city. Well, she kind of grew up in it. Um, all right, so I'm gonna give you my thoughts on this book. First of all, the book itself is fun. There's a lot of tension in what happens in it. There's a lot of sequences which are entertaining, especially because it's very scientific. Now, I know that sounds a little bit contradictory, but let me explain. Um, some of these sequences are very high pressure. There's a lot of stakes at hand, so it makes everything feel like something's gonna go wrong. Especially because nature's so harsh, especially when it comes to space and living in space. Uh, yeah, so I think the author does a good job in putting these sequences together and serving it to the readers as digestible bits, so the readers can also feel like they're experiencing problems that could happen in a lunar city later on in their lives if they ever go there. Uh, Plus, there's a lot of world building in this book. There's a lot of minor details, such as the coordinates to a certain room, which reflect which building it is, what floor it is, which ring it is, because all the buildings are kind of bubbles and they have rings around it, and what degree from true north these buildings are. A lot of these minor details are set up really well. However, this book also does have flaws. The first flaw is that the protagonist is a little bit uncomfortable, and she's pretty much a Mary Sue, in my opinion. She is constantly reminded that she is extremely smart and talented, except she doesn't put the work in, and she kind of brags on it a little bit, that kind of thing that, really talented people do when they kind of say, oh, it's really easy. If you think about it, well, it's not really easy, even if we do think about it for like a few hours. So there's that going on. So she's not very likable in a sense. You can have an extremely talented protagonist, but at least I think you got to make her a little bit humble. And I think Jazz, the main character, kind of fails in that regard. Second, I feel like the author tried to go towards the diversity route. Um, the main character being a Saudi Arabian female, side characters being homosexual, a lot of that. Except it doesn't really come out as well because the book, the characters and their conversations and their interactions are kind of defined by what they are. So let's say there's a conversation with a homosexual, and there has to be a gay joke in there, and for nearly every sentence, and that's pretty iffy. And I think the author tried, with its main character Jasmine, to try and create some badass female protagonist similar to the likes of Jessica Jones, especially like Jessica Jones, where she is very cool and nonchalant, not very regarded as feminine in a sense, but that kind of backfires on him because he doesn't really know how to talk like a female, if that makes any sense. So basically, the vibe I got from Jazz's interactions with the reader and interactions with the other characters is that Jazz sounds like a teenage boy who just hit puberty. She makes a lot of references to sex, which is not not in and itself bad, but it gets kind of distracting when the plot is trying to run, but there's another constant reminder that Jasmine has a lot of meaningless sex, um, which we've already heard. There's an ongoing joke about a condom and its uses because it's science, which doesn't really fall that well because whenever I saw this brought up in every single conversation, and it's in a lot of conversations, I didn't really feel like it was funny. In fact, it kind of backfired on me. And I think it's not really the fault of the author. He is a white male, so I kind of don't expect him to be able to write in this different perspective. It's not his fault, I believe. But it did kind of backfire when you find some of these jokes that are not relevant to the plot whatsoever, and they don't serve their purpose as jokes. That is, they're not funny. Uh, so that was kind of disturbing. Second, there are slight little plot holes that you might catch. I didn't catch them because I read this book first in Korean, but I did catch them after I read it thoroughly in English. Um, and you'll see what I'm talking about. These minor little things that are kind of glossed over. Sometimes kind of nags in your brain. It definitely nagged in my brain while I was reading the book, and I had a trouble going forward and leaving that behind. Also, there are some inconsistencies with the accents. Like I said, he tried to bring a lot of diversity into this lunar city, which is fine because it's a lunar city, and there's a clear backstory for why there is such a diverse cast. However, he doesn't kind of capture some of the accents very well. There's inconsistencies between the accents, even on the same page, which kind of led me out of the story overall. Alright, anything else? I thought the main character's interactions with the other characters they were questionable. They were interesting in a way, but I didn't feel like it was enough to carry the story. In fact, the carrying point of the story was Jasmine explaining some of the science to the readers. And this is what I also this is also going to come up in my next point. Um, but I felt like some of these conversations could have been more developed and more actual human-like. Alright, next point. There are a lot of sequences, just like The Martian, where the author explains a lot of this science going on in the particular moment. And some people might be turned off by this because you need to have a little bit, I believe you need to have a rudimentary understanding of chemistry and physics and air particles, especially pressure, because that's an important thing in this book in order to actually fully understand and enjoy the book. Other than that, you might kind of feel lost because a lot of these explanations might be plugged in into certain action scenes or certain actiony moments in the story, and you might be pulled out of it because you don't know what the hell the author is talking about, so you have to read through it over and over. So those parts are a little disappointing in this book. Other than that, I thought the ending was a little lackluster. I thought the author could have done more with the ending. And personally, I like the concept of this book. I like the world building. I like the science in it, but I would not recommend this book to another friend. Or I'm not going to recommend this book to you. I would not buy this book at full price. I bought it at full price. I would buy it maybe in a garage sale or in a used bookstore. But if you have actually nothing to read, or you're a science nerd and you like reading about sciencey stuff, there's a lot of stuff like that in here. All right, so those are my thoughts on the book Artemis. if I do actually get to read some more books, which I'm trying to do this vacation, I will talk about my thoughts.